I've been able to create a community of equity and excellence within my classroom by utilizing the Schoology platform as a way to administer our open physical education and ETR Health Smart curriculum. This enables every student to have access to the same materials, whether we are in distance learning, our AB cohorts, or for students and families who chose to stay fully remote. I'm hoping that this consistency has helped both students and their families to find success during the uncertainty of the school year so far.
I am able to create excellence and equity in my classroom by going the extra mile for my students. If they do not have access to internet, I have sent parents packets. I have sent text messages so that students are able to still get access to all of the materials that we use in class. Students are able to dial into Google Meets. Students are able to call into Google Meets. Students who struggle with doing their work independently are able to come to my office hours and ask for help. I am able to communicate when students are doing well, and I'm also able to target those students who need a little extra help. I recognize my students for their excellence, and I help them succeed in all areas.
The way that we create the community of equity, we're especially during these challenging times, we have to be super aware of the challenges that our students and their families face. We realize that they've got a lack of internet, that they may have a deficit in knowing technological skills. We have to be super cognizant of them, the families losing their jobs during these times. So being an advocate for them is really important by providing those contacts and resources that could be of benefit to them. Not only equally acknowledging, but valuing those efforts of all of the students in our classroom, regardless of race and gender, is super important. We're using an app at Withrow called Talking Points, and that's been really helpful. It was piloted last year at AWL, and it gives us a chance to communicate with all of those families in their native language. I think in order to create that strong sense of community, whether it be face-to-face or online, it's really important for us to be flexible as educators and make sure that we're really guiding those students. We should still have high expectations and rigor, but of course it needs to be coupled with compassion and equity.
This year, more than ever, for me, it's important that our students have access to grade level appropriate work. However, it is a reality we had to face that some of our students may have some unfinished learning from last school year. So it was important that I took an asset-based approach instead of a deficit approach so that we could tap into students' prior knowledge, talk about their self-efficacy skills, and really see what skills they did and did not master by the end of last school year. So it was important to use strategies that would focus on that unfinished learning. We use things like Pear Deck and vocabulary.com, also the skills lessons on ThinkCirca. And one of the things that was most important to our learning, especially while remote, was the use of the Google Breakout Rooms. My co-teacher and I were really successful at helping students where they were and then getting them where they needed to be, so that by the time we returned to school the second quarter, we could really put more of a focus on the critical aspects of grade level work for this year. So even though this year has brought a lot of new challenges, we have really tried to implement some of these strategies using technology and not to build a sense of community, help students believe in themselves even if they did have some unfinished learning, and really set them up for success for the rest of the school year.
And giving them coping mechanisms to access any curriculum. We are exposed to the same books, the same texts, and the same curriculum as their peers. A lot of read aloud, so maybe they can't read it independently, but they can listen. A lot of scaffolding. And then we read different texts at their level that are high interest, that link directly with those standards.
I have had to really step up my instructional game this year with students coming in. Sometimes they look really sleepy and they're not very engaged. And so I've had to be creative in the way that I motivate them to come to class to see what wacky thing might happen, and also just kind of keep it fresh. So some of the things I do when we're studying observation, we would do video on, video off. When they would turn their video camera off, or when I turn mine off, I would come back and I'd have something ridiculous on like this, and they would have to write down what changed, make observations, scientific observations about that. Other things I would use is I lean heavily on our Discovery Ed tech book. It's been very helpful for these days where I'm not in class with them and they're doing self-guided learning. So that's been helpful. And then I've also had to pull from my resources just from teaching science years past. and making sure that when they are in class with me, we are doing some hands-on activities. With our smaller class size, I've really been able to, I have the supplies that I can do that without having to share equipment. And so the class sizes have really lent themselves to being able to accommodate not being able to share tools and such.
It's been very challenging for our students to do assignments on the computer, but they have found it easier when I link them to Google Docs and Schoology, because we're able to actually view the same assignment at the same time, and I can provide them real-time feedback on what they're doing to make sure that they're on track before they go out on their own for the rest of the days to complete the work. It's been very helpful, and it's been a really great way to be able to communicate with the kids in this distance and blended learning time.
In regards to feedback given during blended and distance learning, it is very important that students have the opportunity to share their ideas, thoughts, and reflections. Several students message me during the day, evening time, and even on the weekends, so they're able to give their best work. I actually use auto-graded assessments as well as teacher-generated assessments. And it's not just the grade that is important to them. They like seeing the responses in Spanish as well as English and suggestions that they're received. So I think it's very crucial that students be able to give feedback that is returned in a reasonable time, maybe 24 to 48 hours, so they can assess how well they are doing and see where they need to improve. So feedback is very crucial. It is important whether it be distance, in person, or in the blended model. Students want to hear back from the teachers, so they are given that input so they can better improve their education. And also it sets up community with the teachers, not just receiving a grade in PowerSchool. It develops a type of relationship that you probably would not have otherwise if you just gave a student a grade in PowerSchool and that was it.
One instructional strategy that I've used during this blended learning time to sort of meet kids where they are, I've used a couple, but I think technology is the number one tool that I've used. And so I wanted to be able to give kids real-time feedback despite the fact that I wasn't going to be with them. And so I'm doing that through my use of Pear Deck, which is an instructional tool that allows me to gain data as kids answer questions, and then they get that feedback in real time. Also, something that I do for my English language learners, we have a lot of students who are not on grade level with their English communication skills. And so through the use of Schoology and the assignments being on Google Docs, gives kids an option to translate the document into their native language. And then they can respond in that language, and I can translate it back to English for better feedback to them.
Pear Deck allows the students or the audience to engage and interact in a variety of ways. So Pear Deck, when I work with my students, I'm able, because of the power of Pear Deck, I can create a lesson and I can differentiate that lesson for different levels of students within Pear Deck, but I can also differentiate it to address specific learner needs. So a student who might express themselves better by drawing an answer or illustrating an answer, they can illustrate an answer. Students that need to type or put answers in that are numerical, you have so much variety in how to use Pear Deck. So Pear Deck is a really great tool. I love it. I can't imagine not using it now with my teaching and being able to differentiate and reach students no matter where they are, whether they're in person or remote.
I implemented several writing strategies during lessons so that 100% of my students would meet proficiency on a wit and wisdom question set with the short answer portion of that. The students in my small groups knew the goal that we were working towards from the very beginning, and also they had individual run charts where they could keep track of their individual progress towards their own individual goals as well. After each data point was collected on the class run chart, we would discuss pluses and deltas of what helped them meet that goal or what didn't help them meet that goal.